It was a day like any other, and I was studying peacefully. Suddenly, a strange noise coming from my brother's room took my concentration away. It was a repetitive, kind of strange sound, and it started to make me curious. After a while, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to get up and take a look at what was happening. When I got there, I saw that the door was just ajar. I pushed it slowly, without making any noise, and what I saw left me speechless. My brother was sitting on the bed, holding a photo of me, the one I took on my last day of summer, the photo of me in the pool. But what really left me paralyzed was what he was doing with his other hand, hidden under the blanket, moving in a tense and strange way. I stood there still, without reacting, as if the world had frozen in that moment. Well, before we start, I want you to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any wonderful stories like this one. Subscribe there and like our video. It was a day like any other, the kind of day when everything seemed normal, almost predictable. My parents had left early, as usual, saying they wouldn't be back until late at night. That meant one thing. James, my younger brother, and I would be home alone all day. It wasn't the first time, of course, and we usually even liked it. It was almost as if we had the whole world to ourselves. In the morning, I decided to take advantage of the silence to clean the house. It was almost automatic for me to follow my mother's advice, putting things away in their right place, leaving everything spotless. The smell of cleanliness mixed with the soft sound of the broom on the floor, and I felt satisfied seeing everything organized. When the afternoon came, I decided to change my focus. I grabbed my books and went straight to my room, looking for that quiet corner to study. I closed the door and concentrated on my subjects. Everything was going well. The calm environment was perfect for me to immerse myself in my studies without interruptions. Until something strange happened. Suddenly, a peculiar sound began to echo through the house. It wasn't loud, but it was constant, like a heartbeat. It seemed to be coming from James's room. I stopped what I was doing and tilted my head, trying to understand. It wasn't music or a video game, as he usually listened to. There was something different about the sound, almost intriguing, as if it was purposefully calling my attention. My curiosity began to grow. What could he be doing? I got up slowly, trying not to make any noise, and walked to his room. I stopped in front of the door and knocked softly. I waited for an answer, but silence was the only thing I received. I knocked again. Nothing. That made me even more intrigued. I grabbed the doorknob and pushed the door open slowly, almost without wanting to make any noise. What I saw there was something that, honestly, I had never thought of seeing. James was sitting on the bed. He was holding a picture of me in one hand, and the other was hidden under the blanket, moving in a strange, disconcerting way. In that instant, it was as if my body had frozen. Every muscle froze, my mind went blank, and everything around me seemed to have stopped. James looked up, and when our eyes met, the shock was mutual. He froze too. His face turned so red, it looked like it was on fire, and he tried, awkwardly, to hide what he was doing, holding the photo against his chest. Silence filled the room. It was so heavy, so intense, that it seemed to scream inside my head. My mouth was dry, but somehow I managed to force the words out. "James, what are you doing?" He stammered, trying to find words, but all he could manage was a desperate apology. "Sis, I'm sorry." The shame on his face was evident, but that didn't lessen the whirlwind of feelings that consumed me. Anger, sadness, disgust, confusion. All at the same time, like an uncontrolled storm. Not knowing what to do, I just turned around and left the room. My legs seemed to move on their own, taking me back to my room while my heart raced as if it wanted to escape from my chest. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to organize my thoughts, but nothing made sense. Why did he do that? Had I done something wrong? Was it my fault? These thoughts swirled around in my mind, leaving me even more confused and lost. Night fell, bringing with it an almost unbearable silence. I stayed locked in my room, not daring to face James, and he seemed to feel the same. There was no exchange of words, no glances. The house, which had previously seemed welcoming and full of life, now felt heavy and suffocating. The next day, I tried to act as if nothing had happened, but it was impossible to ignore the strange atmosphere between us. James avoided any eye contact, spending the entire day locked in his room. And me? I tried to move on, but I knew deep down that something had changed. That question wouldn't leave my head. How to move on after this? Days passed, and the atmosphere in the house remained the same. Heavy, silent, suffocating. Every time I passed James in the hallways, the weight of the situation seemed to grow. I could no longer run away to pretend that nothing had happened. It was clear to me that sooner or later we would have to face this, and I knew that that moment had to be now. It was a quiet night, the kind of night when the entire house seemed to be plunged into a deep silence. My parents were already asleep, and the only light came from a dim lamp in the hallway. My heart was pounding as I walked slowly to James's room. Each step felt harder than the last, as if something invisible was trying to stop me from moving forward. When I reached his door, I took a deep breath, gathering all the courage I had. With a shaking hand, I slowly pushed the door open. There he was, sitting on the bed. His shoulders were hunched, and his head was down, as if the weight of everything was weighing him down. The scene hit me hard. He looked so small, so lost, so different from the brother I knew. For a moment, I hesitated. The air in the room was thick, almost suffocating, but I knew I couldn't turn back. If I backed out now, the silence would only get heavier, more unbearable. I walked slowly over to him and, without saying anything, sat down next to him on the bed. The bed creaked slightly under his weight, but he didn't react. Finally, I took a deep breath and broke the silence. "James, we need to talk." My voice was firm, but there was a note of gentleness in it. He remained still, not looking at me. He mumbled something inaudible, a weak attempt to end the conversation before it even began. But I couldn't let that happen. Not this time. I insisted, making it clear that I wouldn't leave until we had that conversation. At first, he remained quiet, as if he was trying to gather his courage, or perhaps waiting for me to give up. But finally, after a silence that seemed endless, he raised his head a little, although he still didn't look at me. His voice was low, trembling, full of emotion. "I hate myself for this. I know it's wrong, but I can't control it." These words were like a punch in the stomach. My heart clenched, and for a moment, I didn't know what to say. The whirlwind of emotions inside me was overwhelming. Sadness, confusion, compassion, anger, all at the same time. James was visibly broken, drowning in guilt and shame. I could see it in every detail, in the hands he held clasped together, in the eyes that refused to meet mine, in the shoulders that seemed to carry the weight of an entire world. Part of me wanted to hug him and tell him that everything would be okay, but another part knew that I needed to be firm, that I needed to set boundaries. I looked at him, trying to organize my thoughts. My words needed to be careful, but also clear. I wanted him to understand that what he had done was wrong, but that it didn't mean he was alone. After a few seconds, which felt like hours, I finally said, "James, I don't know exactly what you're feeling or why this happened, but you need to understand that this can't go on. We need to find a way to deal with this, to solve this together." He didn't answer right away, but I could see that something changed in his posture. His shoulders relaxed a little, as if the weight he was carrying had lifted, if only a little. We sat there for a while, not saying anything else. The tension in the air was almost palpable, but in that silence there was something new, a kind of understanding, a spark of hope that maybe we could get through this. I didn't have all the answers, and honestly, I didn't even know where to begin. But one thing was certain: this was just the beginning of something much bigger that we needed to face, and somehow I was determined to find a way, for his sake and for my own. What happened that night completely changed the dynamic between James and me. It was a turning point, a moment that forced us to face feelings, boundaries, and the complexities of a relationship. Despite all the tension and difficulty, James managed over time to overcome the feelings that were weighing him down. But for me, the memories still linger, like a shadow that I carry in silence. By sharing my story, I hope it serves as a lesson for others. Don't let momentary mistakes destroy important relationships. We all face challenges, but it's how we deal with them that defines who we are and what we build with the people around us. Thank you for listening to my honest confession, and if you want to watch a really nice and moving story, click on this video that's on the screen. You'll love it.